Ash drifted over the shattered landscape of Karnak. 7. Settling in thick layers across the bones of the dead and the rusted skeletons of once great war machines. The sky, cloaked in permanent dusk, pressed down like a weight, tinted green by the dying atmosphere. No birds cried, no insects buzzed, no wind stirred. Only the low groan of metal expanding in the heat and the distant crackle of an occasional fire breaking through the silence. It was a dead world, or nearly so, but something still moved in the ruins. Beneath the jagged edge of a collapsed defense platform, a figure lay prone, wrapped in the battered armor of a long-forgotten war. His suit was patched with alien plating, stitched together with salvaged fiber wire and old Earth military camouflage. The red gleam of his cracked visor flickered with a single blinking line of telemetry. His rifle, long and cruelly modified, rested like an extension of his breathless body. He hadn't moved in hours. Sergeant Rael Morgan, Omega Earth Recon, blinked once as his scope adjusted. 3 Dominion scouts were moving down the east trench line, spaced evenly, weapons up, scanning. Their armor glowed faintly with internal power signatures, each step confident, rhythmic, practiced. They were Thalzor, elite hunters bred for war, faster and stronger than humans by design. But Rael didn't flinch. He had seen them bleed. One of them paused, head turning too sharply, too fast. The Dominions still hadn't adapted to the instincts of real terrain. They relied on sensors, on predictability. Rael shifted his angle by a fraction of a degree. The shot rang out like the crack of distant thunder. The lead scout's head exploded in a violet mist. The others dropped instantly, sliding into cover, their weapons firing in synchronized bursts toward his last known position. But Rael was already moving, slithering backward under the broken platform, vanishing into the bones of the machine. He counted his breaths, checked the shell ejection port, watched his heat levels drop. The Dominion would search. They always did, but they wouldn't find him, not unless he wanted them to. He crawled through the charred understructure of a burned-out crawler tank, emerging behind a row of collapsed girders. The battlefield stretched before him like a black ocean of ruin. Dozens of impact craters pockmarked the terrain, each one a tomb. And beneath it all, somewhere deep and buried, lay the bodies of his team. Rael tapped his wrist console. Battery at 32%. Oxygen cycling stable. Ammunition count 15 standard, 4 hollow, 1 armor piercing. No resupply. No command. No evac. Only the hunt. 3 weeks had passed since the drop. He had come with 7 others, handpicked, hardened, trained for recon and precision operations. Their mission was simple: disrupt Dominion supply lines, map terrain for future incursions, extract after 3 days. The fleet was supposed to provide overwatch. They never made it past orbit. Rael remembered the light, brighter than the sun, as the sky tore open and the fleet disintegrated. A surprise barrage from the Dominion's newly commissioned Judicator-class dreadnought had wiped out everything before they even touched the ground. His squad's descent pods were scattered, vulnerable, hunted. One by one, their signals vanished. He survived by accident. His beacon had malfunctioned. Or maybe that wasn't an accident. He shifted positions again, looping behind the remains of a scorched pipeline, scanning for signs of movement. The remaining 2 scouts had vanished. Smart. They were learning. That, or they were calling for backup. He didn't like either option. A brief ping echoed through his comms. Low band, encrypted. Rael's heart jumped. He hadn't heard that frequency since day 1. He tapped a reply. Omega Actual. Identify. A moment of silence. Then a whisper broke through the static. Private Lien Zhou. Last known position grid 32. Underground access. Listening. Thought I was the last. Rael exhaled slowly. Not relief. He'd forgotten what that felt like, but something close to purpose. How long? Since the blast. I've been moving. Listening. Watching. They're scared of something, Rael. I think it's you. He allowed himself a slight grimace, a movement that might have once been a smile. Hold position. I'll reach you. Negative. I'll come up when I can. You keep them watching shadows. The line went dead. He stared into the horizon, where thick smoke obscured the jagged silhouettes of retreating Dominion outposts. They had sent wave after wave to root him out. Scout teams, drone flights, thermal sweeps, subsonic scans. All failed. Each time they lost someone, the rumor spread. The sniper of Karnak, 7, the ghost in the ash. They called him Deathless. He hadn't planned to become myth. He had just refused to die. Rael slid into the lower trench, stepping over twisted rebar and the burnt skeleton of a crawler mech. He reached into a side compartment of his armor and retrieved a small metal disc. Pressing it into the dirt, he activated a localized disruption field. A decoy. It would simulate human movement patterns, emit false heartbeats, mimic shallow breathing. Enough to draw attention. He climbed 3 levels above it and waited. Minutes passed. Then movement. 6 Dominion troops, advancing in a perfect diamond formation. Their weapons glowed. Their armor shimmered like oil. He let them close in, watched as they surrounded the decoy. Then, as one reached for it, he fired. The round punched through 2 helmets before the others could react. Rael moved again, vanishing into the smoke, his rifle cooling against his chest. The Dominions scattered, weapons blazing. A moment later, the decoy detonated in a burst of shrapnel. Screams echoed through the trench. They had underestimated him when he arrived. A human, alone, with an outdated rifle and a fractured command. But humans, real humans, weren't bred in sterile labs or programmed for obedience. They adapted. They improvised. They endured. Rael knew they would send more. They always did. And when they came, he would be ready. He climbed to the ridge as the sky darkened further. In the distance, a new fleet had appeared. Sleeker silhouettes. High command. Someone important was watching now. Good. He keyed into the Dominion broadcast channel, switched on a single-use voice injector, and transmitted 3 words in perfect Thalzoric. I see you. Then he switched it off. He lay prone again, rifle nestled into his shoulder, eyes locked on the stars. He didn't know how many more shots he had left, but each one would matter. And when the next soldier walked into his sights, they wouldn't be looking for a man. They'd be searching for a myth. The myth was real, and it was still breathing. Ash shifted as boots pounded the earth. The Dominion's elite moved with inhuman precision, sweeping their formation across the ruins like a steel net. Rael watched from a ridge, body motionless beneath a slab of scorched metal. He counted 12, taller, heavier than the usual patrols. Their armor had ridged exoskeletons pulsing with energy veins. These weren't soldiers. They were hunters. He slowed his breathing. These ones wouldn't spook easily. They wouldn't call for evac at the first shot. They came to end a ghost story. A new voice buzzed across the Dominion comms, deeper than the rest. Calculated calm. Rael's makeshift translator filtered out static. Target is alone. Earthborn. Intelligence confirms over 50 confirmed kills. Do not underestimate. That voice wasn't posturing. It was clinical. Efficient. They'd stopped laughing. That mattered more than any shot he'd fired. Rael slipped down into a collapsed ventilation shaft, boots silent on corroded steel. He moved like breath, descending deeper into the ruins, where heat and shadow wrapped around him like a cloak. 1 level below the hunters now. He waited. His fingers brushed the side of a rusted pipe, found the wire he'd laid 2 days ago, ran it up to the trigger switch hidden in his gauntlet. One twitch, and the rig charge beneath the old Dominion lander would sing. A low thump echoed through the halls above. One of them had moved a door. Too confident. He tapped the switch. The explosion above was fast, sharp, clean, and deafening. Stone, metal, and armored limbs rained past the open shaft. Screams followed. The Dominion's elite had just walked into the first snare. But Rael wasn't waiting for confirmation. He was already moving. Through a maintenance tunnel, back toward the outer trench lines. The dead didn't need to see what came next. The living would carry the message. He emerged from the tunnel at the edge of the killing field, a burned stretch of craters and broken towers where his squad made their last stand. Scorched bodies still lay in twisted heaps. He hadn't buried them. He couldn't. Not then. The field had to remain untouched. A warning, etched in blood. Rael took cover behind a shattered artillery mount, adjusted his rifle's balance, and scanned the horizon. 2 Dominion troopers had survived the blast. He could see them limping through the blackened smoke, dragging wounded comrades. No formation now. No perfection. He didn't shoot. Not yet. Through the heat haze, a new silhouette emerged. Broad, reptilian, plated in shimmering black armor, laced with glowing red. A Dominion commander. Not the voice on the radio. A field officer. High-ranking. The kind they didn't send unless provoked. The officer stepped forward, lifted a weapon the size of Rael's torso, and scanned the field. His eyes glowed beneath a transparent helm, flicking across the terrain with cold intelligence. He turned slowly, then pointed toward the trench line. Rael moved before the first blast. The ground behind him exploded, flinging molten soil and bone into the air. The Dominion had upgraded. Orbital assist precision artillery. Short delay between marking and impact. He'd have to keep moving. But as he slid into a new position beside a gutted supply crawler, a new signal chirped on his comm scanner. Not Dominion. Not automated. A human signal. Weak, pulsing. He froze. It was impossible. There hadn't been any human signals since the first day. He checked again. Short wave burst. Encrypted in Earth military code. Rael opened a narrow band and whispered, "This is Sergeant Rael Morgan. Identify." Silence. Then a voice, quiet, female, hoarse with static. "Didn't think you were real." Rael's heart kicked once, sharp and sudden. "Who is this?" he demanded. "Private Lian Zhou. Omega Earth. Recon specialist. Last evac point failed. Been in the underground since day 3. Rael blinked. The weight in his chest tightened. He hadn't heard another human voice in weeks. "How are you still alive?" he asked. "Same way you are." Kept moving. Kept quiet. Her transmission weakened. She was far, maybe kilometers beneath the surface, but close enough to matter. "Send location," Rael said. "No, not yet. They're crawling the tunnels. You keep the top side burning. I'll find you when I can." And just like that, the signal cut. Rael stared into the broken distance, his thoughts spiraling. He had accepted being the last. He needed to be the last. It was simpler, cleaner. But now someone else had endured. Someone else had seen the same fire and kept walking. He reset his rifle's balance and adjusted his scope. The Dominion was still advancing. Their commander had split the unit, half circling wide, half pressing the center. Coordinated, relentless. Their arrogance was peeling away, but their discipline remained. That was dangerous. Rael flicked a small metal disc from his belt and embedded it into the stone beside him. A short-range disruptor, programmed to mimic human movement signatures. He activated it. 30 seconds later, the Dominion squad opened fire on a false echo, thinking they'd caught him flanking. Plasma bolts scorched a boulder field as Rael used the chaos to realign his angle. 1. The Dominion sniper fell with a hole through his optic dome. 2. A heavy gunner dropped to his knees, helmet smoking, before collapsing face-first into the ash. The third target, Commander, jerked his head just as a shot landed. The round struck his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Not dead, but wounded, bleeding. Human blood didn't glow. Theirs did. Rael ducked as a spray of return fire glassed the wall behind him. He rolled into a trench and disappeared beneath a fallen beam. The Dominion was scattering, no longer hunting, just surviving. But Rael wasn't done. He retrieved an old beacon from his pouch. It was dented, crusted with grime, but still pulsed with faint blue light. He turned it over and activated its loop cycle. A soft hum filled the trench. It began broadcasting one message. Humanity endures. Karnak, 7 is not yours. He planted it in the open and retreated into the smoke. Minutes passed. Dominion troops approached the beacon cautiously, weapons up. One reached to disable it. Rael waited for his silhouette to line up. One shot. 2 bodies fell. The one who touched it and the one behind him. They stopped approaching after that. As the sunless sky dimmed into toxic dusk, Rael climbed the northern ridge and looked out over the battlefield. Fires burned low. Ash twisted in small storms across the ruins. The Dominion was wounded. That mattered more than how many he had killed. They had come to erase a man. Instead, they had awakened something they didn't understand. He rested against a cold slab of stone and whispered to himself, "She's still alive." That changed everything. The mission wasn't over. The story wasn't done. And tomorrow, the Dominion would bleed more. The sky above Karnak, 7 churned with ash and static, a low, orbital hum pressing into the bones of the ruined world. Rael knelt inside the remnants of a collapsed relay station, his body hidden beneath sheets of warped alloy and dust-covered camo mesh. The walls hummed faintly from residual energy, and his breath was shallow. His mind was not on the sky. He held a casing in one gloved hand, a cracked, scorched memory chip. He'd retrieved it from a Dominion scout's helmet, rigged to auto-erase upon defeat. He'd overridden that. Now, a grainy projection flickered above his palm, showing a low-orbit fleet formation, accompanied by a symbol he hadn't seen in weeks. A black insignia. 3 vertical lines crossed by a blood-red arc. Command Echelon. They were sending a high strategist, not just to kill him, to erase his legend. He studied the image until it faded, then tucked the chip into his chest rig. Above him, he could hear the rumble of troop carriers shifting formations. His ears picked up the sound of precise marching, aerial drones deploying with heavy whines. The Dominion was preparing for finality. He didn't feel fear. Not exactly. What he felt was focus sharpening into something surgical. Rael moved. Across the broken landscape, he sprinted low, weaving between shattered hulls and collapsed infrastructure. His feet touched the ground in silence. Every step was calculated. He reached the drop site of a Dominion exo-loader, half buried in the dirt, its armor panels sheared from an earlier blast. Inside, among the exposed servo systems, he found what he needed, a Dominion grav core. He slung it into his pack. The weight was wrong, too unstable for long-term use. But for what he had in mind, he only needed minutes. He returned to the trench network, eyes scanning for movement. Above, Dominion Recon drones hissed through the sky, invisible to the naked eye, but not to his improvised scanner. He tapped the side of his visor. Target markers appeared. Rael used the terrain like memory, slipping through burned corridors and long-dead bunkers with the instinct of a man who'd mapped every crack by heart. He arrived at the signal point, the highest ridge overlooking the valley ruins, a plateau of scorched stone with a shattered comm tower at its center. It was a sniper's dream and a death trap all the same. He began assembling the rifle. It wasn't the same one he'd carried for weeks. That weapon had reached its end. This was a new creation. No, a culmination. The rail barrel came from a Dominion prototype he'd ambushed on day 6. The core stabilizer from a crushed Earth Recon vehicle. He bolted the grav core into the receiver, stabilizing it with steel clamps and improvised heat sinks. The scope was calibrated for orbital refraction. He sat, breathed in, and adjusted his position. In the sky above, the Dominion fleet drifted into view, cold, precise, terrifying in its scale. At its center, a ship larger than the rest. Angular. Purposeful. Not for war, but for decisions. Rael found a ship's name etched in alien glyphs along the hull. Translation blinked across his HUD. THELZOR, Judicator. Aboard it, the high strategist would be watching everything. Every death, every maneuver. That was their way. They didn't fight battles, they curated outcomes. He aligned the scope, adjusted for atmospheric distortion. The targeting line jittered. This was not a guaranteed shot. The orbital angle was shifting, and the planet's electromagnetic interference was wild. But he had studied Dominion orbital paths for weeks. He'd been preparing. He slowed his breath, counted it down. 3, 2, 1. He fired. The silence after the shot was absolute. A single arc of condensed energy streaked upward, vanishing into the sky like a comet. He held position, watching, waiting. 6 seconds later, a small burst flared in orbit. No explosion, just a glittering rupture of pressure and glass. The Judicator's command deck shattered open. Rael blinked once. He had hit it. Moments passed before the response came. The fleet reeled. Ships turned sharply. Movement scattered like hornets. The sky lit up with flashes of emergency thrusters. Then came the scream, an unearthly, digital howl across the Dominion comms. A sound Rael had never heard before. Alien panic. He moved instantly. Dominion ground forces below fell into chaos. Orders were barked, redirected, contradicted. Patrols doubled back, firing at phantoms. Rael's calculated insanity had worked. He had cracked the myth of their invincibility. He descended from the sniper's perch, blending into the ruins. The rifle he left behind, smoking and warped. One weapon, one shot. That was its purpose. He would not need it again. He returned to the lower ruins where shadows ran deeper and wind howled through the bones of steel. There, amid the destruction, the signal pinged again. "Sergeant," the voice crackled. "Lien." He keyed the line. "I'm here." "They're withdrawing," she whispered. "I don't understand it." "What did you do?" Rael didn't answer right away. He stepped into a crater filled with shattered helmets and silent rifles. He crouched and picked up a Dominion insignia plate, thumb brushing off the soot. "I reminded them," he said quietly, "that humans don't miss when it matters." The line was silent for a moment. "Do I come to you?" Rael thought carefully. "No," he said. "Stay hidden. I need you to wait one more night. They're not done yet." Above, in the twilight of the ruined moon, the Dominion ships were pulling into tighter formations. No reinforcements. No orbital strikes. Just fear now. They didn't know what was left or how many. All they had were body counts and silence. The legend was growing. And Rael knew something else. Fear multiplies. It spreads faster than orders. He moved through the ruins toward an old Dominion relay tower, still crackling with intermittent power. At the console, he rerouted the beacon Lien had found and added a message, short, looping, encrypted. It broadcast on every Dominion frequency. The ghost walked still. He watched it go, rising into their skies like a whisper made of smoke. Then he turned away, stepped into the dark, and disappeared once again. The fires had burned low across Karnak, 7, leaving behind columns of smoke that drifted skyward like morning banners. The ruins were quieter now, not with peace but with the hollow silence of retreat. Above, the once proud formation of the Dominion fleet hovered at a greater distance, its vessels dimmed, formations loose. The Judicator was gone. No announcements had followed, no retaliation orders, no thunderous return salvos. Just silence and shifting shadows. Rael stood atop a broken transmission tower, his visor cracked and useless, eyes squinting against the grit in the wind. His armor hung loose now, scored, battered, rusting at the seams. But he had kept the plates that mattered. Beneath one arm, slung close to his ribs, was a long metal case wrapped in scorched polymer netting. Inside, the tags of fallen comrades clinked softly with each step. He watched a Dominion dropship descend toward the far horizon, its thrusters igniting clouds of ash as it disappeared into the dead valleys. There were no patrols guarding its exit, no forward scouts. They weren't rotating out. They were leaving. The conflict was no longer a matter of winning. It had become a matter of surviving, and their illusion of control was broken. Rael turned back toward the ruins. The echo of footsteps guided him into the lower levels of the Eastern Trench Network, where twisted scaffolding leaned like fractured ribs over corridors of stone and dirt. He moved cautiously, not from fear, but from memory. Every angle of this place was familiar. He had learned in solitude, one breath, one trap, one echo at a time. At the lowest access point near a flooded shaft, he paused, hand brushing the side of a scorched panel. He tapped twice, then again. A door groaned open. Lien stood inside, gaunt but alive, wrapped in mismatched gear salvage from a dozen wrecks. Her rifle was raised for a heartbeat before her expression shifted. She lowered it. "You look worse," she said. Rael managed a dry smile. "Better than being dead." She stepped aside, and he entered the small bunker. The walls were covered in Dominion fabric and blackout mesh. A stolen rations pack sat open beside a dead field light. In one corner, a small terminal flickered with a looping sensor sweep. "You've been watching the sky," he said. "They're backing off," she confirmed. A few ships left orbit. The rest haven't moved in hours. Still transmitting? I kept it subtle. Interference masking, low cycle pings only. Rael nodded, pleased. She had survived more than expected. Adapted well. He sat down across from her and removed the case. Carefully, he opened it, revealing the 7 tags. She looked at them, her expression sharpening, eyes tracking the names. They were Omega Earth? She asked. He nodded. You were all that was left. I thought I was, he said, until I heard your voice. She didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, just full. Eventually she asked, what now? We won't hold this place alone. You know that. Rael's gaze was steady. We're not trying to hold it. We've already won what matters. She tilted her head slightly, skeptical. He leaned forward. They came here to make an example of us. One squad, one moon, sweep and sterilize. But instead, we bled them, broke their perfect plans, made them question what they know. Fear, she said, understanding. You turn it on them. Rael nodded. That's what kills empires. Not bullets. Not fleets. Doubt. She sat back, processing. We'll be hunted. Eventually, he agreed. But not yet. For now, they'll hesitate. Reassess. Reassign. That buys time. Time for what? For others to see, Rael said, standing again. For the story to spread. He moved to the console and activated the beacon. This time, he let it run at full strength unmasked. The signal rose like a flare into the void. Across Dominion sectors, relay stations would receive it. On contested moons and hidden resistance channels, it would play. A single human held Karnak, 7. A single shot shattered the judicator. The ghost walked still. He shut it off after one full loop. Lien stood, shouldering her gear. We'll need to move soon. Not yet, Rael said. One more thing. He led her back up through the corridors, out onto the ridge where the stars were finally visible. The ash had thinned, and for the first time in weeks, the sky felt like sky again. He reached into the case and pulled out a thin metal rod, long and etched with old Earth symbols. He planted it into the cracked stone and locked it in place. The Earth flag unfolded, darkened from soot, edges torn, but unmistakable. Lien watched him in silence. We mark it, he said. Not for them. For us. She nodded once, then stepped beside him, both of them facing the valley where the Dominion had once claimed superiority. Now it was a graveyard, and somewhere beneath the rubble lay proof that even a galaxy-spanning empire could bleed. They stood there for a long moment. Behind them, their comm units chirped softly, new signals, encrypted, repeating the loop Rael had sent. But not his own. These were replies. Weak, fragmented, distant but human. A dozen at first. Then more. We hear you. We saw the shot. We're with you. Rael closed his eyes for a breath, then opened them. He turned to Lien. Time to vanish again. Where to? She asked. Doesn't matter, he said, already moving. The stars remember us now. They disappeared into the ruins as night fell fully across Karnak, 7. And above them, in the void where silence once reigned, the galaxy began to whisper a new name. Deathworlder, Sniper, Ghost, and the Empire, for the first time, feared the dark.